What's good, YouTube? It's Justice I Used to Be Pay, and today I'm back with another video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why Future is probably a top 5 versus artist ever. But before I get into that, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Do all those things. It helps me out a ton. And also, I'm making this video because I feel like I don't talk about Future enough. I feel like everybody as a whole doesn't talk about Future enough, but that's also kind of a part of his brand. But I wanted to show Future some love because he's about to drop a brand new album with Metro Boomin titled We Don't Trust You. So yeah, I just wanted to show Future a little bit of appreciation. Future is one of the best rappers of this generation, and in my opinion, he's a little underrated on like the greatest of all time scale. Like that conversation, I feel like he's a little underrated, especially if we're just limiting it to like the last 15 to 20 years. I think Future has to be somewhere on your list. He doesn't have to be number 1 or top 5 or even top 10, but if we're only talking, you know, from 2010 to today, or maybe even like back to like 2005, I think he needs to be there. That's just my opinion. But me personally, I don't have Future as like a top 5 rapper ever or a top 10 rapper ever or something like that. Maybe he might be close to cracking my top 10, but when it comes to Verzuz, Future's probably top 5, and if he's not top 5, he's definitely top 10, and he's not at the very bottom of the top 10. Verzuz, for the people who don't know and have heard me say it a couple times now and are just really confused, is basically a musical format way of like putting artists against each other. It's basically like, you know, musical combat IRL. It's like Mortal Kombat, but with music. So you take 2 artists and there's 2 rounds and they each have 10 songs per round, and they do this in front of a live audience, and basically the audience kind of chooses which songs they liked more, who played the better songs, and that person won. Now, obviously this isn't like a foolproof method to find out who the better artist is, obviously, right? Like it's just depending on the audience and who likes what. It doesn't tell you who makes better music. It doesn't tell you who's greater all time. It's just kind of a fun, you know, little format of competition of music. And also the format definitely heavily favors bangers over anything, right? Like bangers and really, really lit songs, because of course, like you can play good songs that are a little bit slower, but at the end of the day, you want the crowd to be excited about what you're playing. You want the crowd to be super amped up, and it's just really more of a fun thing. But we always have this conversation when it comes to rap. We always have the conversation of who would win in a versus, Drake or Kanye, who would win in a versus, Jay-Z or Wayne, who would win in a versus, Jay-Z or Kanye. Like there's always these conversations, and I feel like Future has kind of been, you know, excluded from these conversations unfairly, because I genuinely believe that he beats like 95% of rappers in a versus. Now, of course, that's just my opinion, but I'm going to give you a little bit more to explain why I feel this way. And also, one major part that I have to add in about versus is it really depends on the audience as well, right? Like obviously the audience picks, so it depends on them, but I mean more so like the age of the audience members and where the audience is from, right? Like if you go to New York with a bunch of 40 and 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, they might not be feeling Future like that. If you go to LA, if you go to like, you know, where they be doing like, where do they do Coachella? I forgot where it is. But if you go to Coachella with a whole bunch of like 16, 17-year-old like white girls, they might not be feeling Future like that. You get what I'm saying? So the audience obviously matters a bunch as well. So the format of Verzuz isn't foolproof, like I said earlier, but I think if we're looking at it from like a pretty average standpoint, Future's going to beat more people than he would lose to. Future is just an artist who has so many hits, right? Like Future's been in the mainstream light since like 2012. And since that time, he's been the guy that just makes hits, like numerous, like just a whole bunch of hits, right? Outside of Drake, there's nobody who you can really compare to Future and say that they have more hits than him, right? There's not a lot of guys that you can say, nah, they got more hits. And I'm talking about real, like statistical hits. I'm not just talking about like good songs, right? Because you can say any song's a hit if you like it. I mean like real hits, like numbers wise. Future is the hit guy. Besides Drake, of course, we know Drake can literally shit on a track and it would debut in the top 10. Besides Drake, Future is the guy for hits. That's why I think he would do so well in a versus against pretty much anyone. Future is kind of like the OG NBA YoungBoy when it comes to dropping a boatload of music and pretty much all of it going on the Billboard at some placement at some point in time, right? Like at the moment, I say at the moment because Future is about to drop a project, and that's probably going to include a lot of hits on it, maybe a number 1, probably some top 10s, definitely some that are just going to reach the charts at some level. At the moment, Future has 2 number 1 hits, he has 10 top 10 hits, and he has 168 Billboard entries. There aren't too many people that can match that. 168 Billboard entries in rap is insane. That's an absurd number of Billboard entries. Now, of course, when you compare him to other people, you look at somebody like Drake, who easily clears him, like, no disrespect to Future, but Drake has 13 number ones. And Drake has 300 plus entries on the Billboard Hot 100. But obviously, again, Drake could literally like take a bubble bath and let it record and then upload it, and it would debut in the top 5. So it doesn't really count for Drake. Kendrick Lamar has 2 number 1 hits and he has 71 entries. That's like that's less than half of what Future has. J. Cole has 1 number 1 hit and 74 entries on the Billboard Hot 100. Again, less than half of what Future has. Kanye has 5 number 1s and 157 entries. Kanye's been around for longer than Future, but Future still has more entries on the Billboard Hot 100. Nicki Minaj has 3 number 1s and 148 entries on the Billboard Hot 100. Again, less than Future. Young Thug has 3 number 1s and 93 entries on the Billboard Hot 100. Again, less than Future. Travis Scott has 4 number 1 songs and 113 entries on the Billboard Hot 100. Again, less than Future. So those numbers that I just threw at you go to show that Future is either on par with or has more hits than a lot of the guys who we consider like the top of the marquee in the last bubble of rap, in this current bubble of rap from like the last like 6 years on. Like, he has the hits. Future has such a deep catalog of music and hits that there's only a couple people that I say for sure beat Future in the verses. Like, there's only a couple people that I look at and I go, okay, he's probably got Future. Like, how there's certain, sporting events where you look at the game and you're like, okay, either team could realistically win here. Or you look at it and you say, this team probably should win, but I wouldn't be surprised if that other team wins. And then there's games where you're like, all right, this team for sure is probably going to win. There's only a couple people that I look at when it comes to Future in a versus where I'm like, all right, Future's, he might be a little outgunned here. Only a couple. There's Drake, Kanye, and Wayne. Outside of that, bro, I'm not gonna lie, it's up with anybody. I think it's really up with anybody that's not those 3 I just named. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that like Future gonna beat everybody else that isn't one of the 3 I just named, but I think it'll be extremely close. He's either gonna slightly lose or he's gonna beat pretty much everyone else, because you have to remember, it's not just good music. Obviously, it is good music, but it's not just good music. The format favors, or at least it heavily does, bangers, right? And nobody has more bangers than Future. I'm sorry. I just don't think there's anybody. If it goes into like a OT and you got to pull out like an extra 10 songs, there's nobody who has more bangers than Future. All right. So if there's a versus and it's between Kendrick and Future, Kendrick is the better artist in my opinion. Yeah, he's the better rapper, better artist, better rapper. He makes better music. Okay, he does. But in that versus format, I'm going to have to favor Future slightly. I'm going to have to slightly favor Future because that's the style of music he makes. Kendrick has bangers, don't get me wrong, but if we're going banger for banger, give me Future, bro. I'm not going to lie. Same with J. Cole. Not exactly a 1-for-1, but like, give me Future. And then after that, it's really give me Future, right? If we're talking about, 21 Savage, Future's watching him. Lil Baby, Future's watching him. Gunna, Future's watching him. Dirk, Future's watching him. NBA Youngboy, Future's watching him. Young Thug, I got Future. Like, after that, and then if you want to even go further into like the Uzis and Cardis, it's really not even that much of a conversation in my opinion. But Future really is that guy in a versus format. Travis is also in that conversation of that, like, Kendrick and Cole were like, it's close. And if you favor Travis, I'm not going to be too mad at you. I think Future would win, but I'm not going to be mad at you. But the rest of those dudes, if you picking them over Future, I'm going to be a little upset. I'm not going to lie. It is subjective at the end of the day. It is. But like, if you picking, Chief Keef over Future, like, I'm going to be mad at you, bro. I am. All right. I am. I'm just being real. But where we really run into issues is with the older artists, right? The Jay-Z's, the Tupacs, the Biggies, the Nas's, the 50 Cents, the Snoop Dogg's, because when it comes to a versus between those two groups, when it comes to a versus between those people and Future, all it really depends on is the audience. That's what's going to decide it at the very end of the day. And I don't just mean the audience is going to pick who wins. I mean the age, right? Because if you get a bunch of people below the age of 30 and you put on Future versus Tupac, Future's going to win. If you put on Future versus Biggie, Future's going to win. If it's Future versus 50 Cent, Future's going to win. Now, if you bring in, that older audience, if it's people from their 40s to even their early 60s, Future's probably going to get watched by all those dudes I mentioned because they don't really rock with that newer music. Even though Future isn't, he's not no young dude himself. He's 40. So, but like, if you bring in that older audience, like our parents, and, maybe if you're a little younger, your grandparents, they're not really rocking with Future like that. So when it comes to a versus between like those older rappers, I can't really say realistically who would win between a versus because the audiences are just so different. Because most of the people who love Future and listen to all his music have not listened to those old people's music in enough like depth to really choose between them and it not just be like, I'm just favoring the guy who I grew up with. Same with the older fans. Most of them aren't really listening to Future like that. Like my dad don't listen to no Future like that. Like he's heard Future. Of course, he knows some of the bigger songs, but he's not really deep into Future's catalog. So if it's Future or somebody like Nas from his era, he's going to pick his era. So when it comes to that type of conversation, I can't really give like a solid answer. Like I feel like there's no real way to really compare the two of those because the audiences for them don't really blend. There's no blend. Like with a Drake in Future, there's a blended audience. With a Thug in Future, there's a blended audience. With a 21 Savage in Future, there's a blended audience to where if you know one, you're probably going to know the other. If you know a lot of Travis, you probably know a lot of Future. If you know a lot of Future, you probably know a lot of Wayne. Like you get what I'm saying? But with these older artists, there isn't as much blend as you would like there to be between like who is really listening to both. So I think it's kind of unfair to try to pick a winner between those two and be like, nah, for sure Pac would beat Future. You get what I'm saying? But just to really put the cherry on top of this video, I'm going to list off some songs that Future could use from a versus. And this is just some that I found. Like I was just scrolling through his music. There's obviously a lot more, but he could use Wait For You, Mask Off, Stick Talk, Jumpman, Low Life, Turn On The Lights, Honest, Codeine Crazy, Relationship, Wicked, Big Rings, March Madness, Draco, Digital Dash, Real Sisters, Throwaway, Solo, Coming Out Strong. Like I could continue to keep going, but I was like, all right, that's probably enough songs for the person watching this video to get the point. So yeah, in this very specific form of musical combat, I think Future is almost impossible to beat by somebody who like, you know, is relatively in the same era and has like some of the similar overlapping audience. Of course, if you want to bring up, you know, I don't know, somebody from way back in the day, if you want to bring up like NWA or something like that, it's not really going to be a fair competition depending on the audience. But in terms of fair competition, Future would probably beat mostly everyone in this generation. He beats Nicki. Yes, I forgot to say Nicki. He beats Nicki in a versus. Like, I feel like Future in versus format is like him tapping into his untapped potential. The only people he's not going to beat are the top dogs. Like a Drake, because Drake has a billion hits. Like a Kanye, even though he has, you know, technically less Billboard entries than Future, but like it's Kanye. A Wayne, it's Wayne. Like, you know, the top undeniable dogs. But for the rest of everybody else from, you know, this generation or not too far behind this generation, I got Future, bro. I'm not going to lie. I got Future. But maybe you agree. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think I'm overrating Future's discography and his catalog. And he really doesn't have that many hits. He's just been gassed up by being like a feature on other people's songs. Whatever you got to say, let me know down below in the comments. And if you want me to respond to your comment, you have to say, let me think for this video. You gotta comment. You have to, okay, for me to respond to your comment, you have to start your comment off with yap, all right? You have to say yap first because I'm yapping in this video, obviously, and it's pay backwards. So start your comment off with yap and I will respond to your comment. But if you made it this far, I greatly appreciate you. Like I truly do. Have a good day. Be safe. Be blessed. Peace.